Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Today I'm doing the full review of the Series X Ciga Design Great Ape. I do want to say a huge thank you to Ciga Design for supplying this watch. Now, I did receive this watch free of charge, and there are going to be some affiliate links directly through to Ciga Design, as well as to the Ciga Design on AliExpress if you wish to buy one. Now, even though on this occasion this watch has been supplied to me, it's not going to change my review. I have reviewed two previous Ciga Design watches, and they were lent to me by a friend, and I gave them rather positive reviews. And I gave them rather positive reviews because they're really good watches. And this one, just like them, has some real positives to it, and it is really interesting and really well made. If you've never heard of Ciga Design, well, Ciga Design is an award-winning watch company from China that is producing some really interestingly designed watches. Unlike some other watches that have design in the name, these ones are all unique designs, and they are really basing their watches on these unique designs. They want them to be different, well made, and interesting and affordable. And I think that's what they are producing, because it is a very interesting, well made, somewhat affordable watch. Now, as I mentioned, if you are interested in one, I'm going to leave some links down below. But guys, if you're watching this and you haven't already subscribed, I would absolutely love if you just click on that subscribe button. But let's flip the camera around now and let's do a full in-depth review of this Ciga Design Series X watch. So the Ciga Design Series X Gorilla or Great Ape, depending on where you look. Firstly, the packaging. I do go on about the packaging with these Ciga Design watches a lot because it is so good. I really do wish other watch companies brought out something similar because I've now worn it, I enjoy it. Where do I put this box? Well, I stick it on my bookshelf rather than stick it in my watch drawer that I put all the boxes in. When you open it up, it gives you some information about the brand itself. There is a nice little window in to see the watch itself with the tenacious features dare to be capricious. Well, that's an interesting thing to say, isn't it? In the back, we have the instructions and some warranty information, some information about the designer and the founder. We have some daily maintenance, some waterproof tips, resting tips, wearing tips, and strap tips. But what I do find interesting, once you open up and it has a nice sort of display there, we've got all the information about the watch there telling us that it's a synthetic sapphire crystal, has a hard mineral case back, and the size, the dimensions, etc, etc. Everything is just right there for you, which I think is very cool. It also gives you some starting instructions about how to get your watch going. As we can see there, there's two strap options. We have a canvas sort of nylon, and we have the rubber strap. So we have two strap options, as mentioned. Both of them have quick release spring bars, which makes it nice and quick and easy to flick back and forth between the two. Both have the same sort of hardware, which is like a rounded end, which is really cool, with the Ciga Design name on there. Very well put together, very well made. I've been mostly wearing it on the rubber strap, so that's what I'm going to show you today. So this watch is obviously designed to look different, interesting, funky, cyberpunk, industrial, futuristic, and that's exactly what comes across to me. It is super cool and super different to other watches in my collection. But the thing that actually shines through for me with this watch from an early point of view is how well it is made. Very well crafted, very well put together, very well executed. It's absolutely fantastic. This one is the titanium blue and titanium. Comes in a few different colors as well. It also comes in a few different features as well. If you look through the different options, there's a few different case materials. There's stainless steel, titanium, PVD black, and there's a few different color options as well. Now the price does vary a little bit with this watch depending on which option you do pick. The cheapest one being around 400 Australian dollars, going up to about 670 Australian dollars. Now, why is this called the Series X? Well, I think that's fairly obvious, isn't it? They're sort of built around this X shape, and I think that's actually kind of cool. And I like how that X shape is colored blue, with all the little features around the watch being colored blue, and the rest being that titanium or silver color. Very cool. Next thing that does stand out to me is that it's a little bit hard to read the time. This watch isn't all about reading the time. I understand it's a watch and you need to be able to read your time. You can read the time, but it's just not as obvious at a glance. That's not the reason for owning this one. Now, being a square watch, the dimensions sort of are a bit different to what you would normally expect from a normal watch and how it fits on wrist. But at the widest point, this is 45.7 millimeters. It is 11.8 millimeters thick. The lug to lug, so it's almost a square here, is 48.2 millimeters. 22mm lug width, and on this rubber strap here, it's 74 grams. So actually quite light on wrist, but it's very, very cool. I do like it. Now, we have a sapphire crystal that is dead flat on the front there. You can see a little bit of AR coating as well, and there's a piece of mineral crystal on the back. And there's another cool feature of it. See how both of those crystals are exactly the same size, so you can look completely through this watch. Very funky. I do like that. I like the sort of different features of this and actually be able to see all the details within the watch, and as well as the movement obviously as well. And in keeping with that sort of skeletonized look, we have skeletonized hands. There's a little bit of lume on the tips of those hands, but there's not a huge amount. It's a bit harder to tell in the dark what time it is, but there's some very cool lume on this X as well. And I'll throw in some lume footage now just to show you how cool it does look. It sort of continues the same as sort of looking at this during the day. It's not about the functionality of actually reading the time. It's about having it look very, very cool on wrist. Something that I do quite like is that needle second handle. Look how much of a needle that looks like. It's even got the little opening on the back. Very, very cool. You can see the mainspring there. So as you wind this one up, you can actually see the spring tighten up. So you can get a bit of an understanding of how much supply or power you've got in that sort of mainspring. As you can tell, it's a push-pull crown. It's not screwed down, but there's no ghost position whatsoever, but it does hack. And obviously, as you can see, hand wind. And as you turn around, you can obviously see it's automatic as well. Now the movement inside this one, they stated it as a CD01. It, to me, I think it's a seagull movement. That's the impression I get. Other movements inside the Ciga Design watches are seagulls, so I'm guessing it's just more of a different design variation or just a seagull movement itself. You see that says CD01 on the back there. It does have a little bit of decoration on that rotor there. Oh yep, you can see that perlage a little bit there, and obviously it says Ciga Design customized movement on there. Very cool. I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. I like how it's put together as well. You can see the two different finishes on there. We've got some high polish on the edges there. Very nice, especially in that titanium. You can see all the little fine details as well, little screw heads. We've got a sign crown in that nice anodized blue look. See the different lines? Yeah, very cool. We've got a gorilla or a great ape on the side there, which is probably one of my only negatives of this watch, to be honest. Feels a little bit cartoony. However, when you're wearing it, you're not really seeing that. So that's not really a big issue for me. There is another interesting feature to this, and that is that it is on a spring. See that? See how it's moving? I'm not really sure if there's actually any sort of functional reason for that, because as you're wearing it, it doesn't spring the other way. It's springing downwards. They say that is inspired by vehicle suspension. So I think it's just an interesting little quirk to it, some other little interesting feature to it. So when you're talking to people about this one, you're saying about this industrial sort of design, this interesting sort of look to it, you can also say that it's on springs. Now, before we jump this on the time grapher, see how this movement is going, I can tell you one slight negative about it. It does make a little bit of noise, but you'd expect a little bit of noise from an automatic watch that looks like this. There's not a lot of material here to block that noise, so almost any movement that it has inside of it, it's going to make a little bit of noise. But it is a little bit of noise. But let's check it on the time grapher and see how it's performing. So as you can see, this one's vibrating at 21,600 vibrations per hour, 0 beat error, which is a lovely thing to see. Perfectly happy with that amplitude as well at 256 degrees, and it's sitting around about plus 15 seconds a day, which in real life use I've been noticing probably more closer to like plus 10 seconds, but in that sort of range, perfectly acceptable. This is also not a watch that I'm really wearing every single day either, so having that sort of plus 15, even if it was a little bit more than that, which it certainly hasn't been, is perfectly acceptable. And let's talk about this rubber strap, because it is actually particularly good. It's a really, really nice rubber strap. Firstly, it's very funky and looks very interesting, but it's also very soft, very pliable. As I mentioned earlier, the hardware on it is very good. And what I do like about it is that the holes are actually inbuilt into the sort of look of the strap itself. So there's no big holes just sitting there or leftovers. You could literally have it all the way out on the end, or you could have it pulled in all the way into the watch itself. So you're going to fit quite a few different wrist sizes. And how's it look on wrist? I think it's kind of funky actually. Sits very flat, which is quite good. Being that square sort of design, fits into my wrist really nicely. I have a 6 3/4 inch wrist for your reference. And look how sort of well it actually sits down onto wrist as well. Very, very funky. As you can see, it's a little bit hard to tell the time, but that's not really the point about this one. It's about being interesting, being funky. And what you'll also see is that little 8 there, which I think is a little bit odd. You don't actually see that when you're wearing the watch. You're not looking down that way very often. With my hair in the way, it kind of blocks it anyway for me. But yeah, very nice. But let's check it out on this other strap. Yeah, and it looks quite cool on that as well, doesn't it? Yeah, fits nicely onto wrist, really tucks in, holds on. A little bit of left over there. As you can see, I don't have a particularly large wrist, so that leaves plenty of room for larger wrists. Very, very nice. So what do I like about this watch? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, the standout feature for me, and this is a good standout feature, is just how well it is made. Everything about it is really sort of put together particularly well, well finished, well thought out, and very cool, a very cool design. Being Ciga Design, it actually has some design here, unlike some other brands. It is very interesting and very, very well executed. I'm very impressed. I like the angles, the industrial sort of look to it. I personally particularly like the silver and blue together. I think that looks absolutely fantastic. And I think it's a nice thing to have a unique, interesting watch in your collection. And this one is an affordable version of that. It's not the super cheap sort of watch as we have seen on some other brands, but it is absolutely worth the extra money, I think, because it is so well put together. What don't I like about it? Well, yeah, that ape, I don't think that needs to be there. I think that sort of detracts from it a little bit. Does make a bit of noise. Not a huge sort of a negative there, but something to be aware of. So that leads me into the two things that I would change. Remove the ape. I don't think it actually needs it. But I'd actually also remove the rotor. Make this a manual only watch. Firstly, that would get rid of that noise. Secondly, it would make the look better because of being a skeletonized watch, you can then see the movement even better. And thirdly, because it is probably an occasional wearing watch, this is not a watch I'm going to wear every single day, I'm going to have to wind it up to wear it anyway. So why not make it a manual wind watch only? I think it would look better, it would be more interesting, and it wouldn't have that little bit of noise. As it is, I'm not really concerned about it being automatic. I think it's kind of still a good and functional feature to have. The noise is not too excessive. It certainly doesn't detract from the watch too much. I still think it is quite an amazing watch. So what are my final thoughts about the watch? Well, as always, let's flip back to me and I'll give you some of those final thoughts. So as I mentioned, this is the third Ciga Design watch I reviewed. I've reviewed the Series Z, the Series MY, and now the Series X. And I think all of them are absolutely amazing. They're amazing from a quality perspective, a finishing perspective, and an interesting design perspective. Now, the looks of these may not be to everybody's tastes, but I think there's two types of people that I think are going to be interested in the Ciga Design watches. Firstly, are for those people that absolutely want this cyberpunk skeleton looking watch and they want that sort of watch in their collection, or they want all their collection to look like this. And then there's people probably a bit more like me, people that have more of a traditional style collection, but they just want to add something to it that's a little bit different, a little bit fun, a little bit just something to look at and enjoy, go out there and be possibly a little bit of a talking point in your collection. Something that people will point at and go, what is that? And then you get to start to have that interesting conversation with people about watches. Or really, you just look down at it and think, that's fun, I like that. But not only is it fun, not only do I like it, but it's also well made, it's well crafted, and it's well put together. And that is something that is amazing, especially at this sort of price. This is not the super affordable end of the market, but we're also not looking at the luxury end of the market. This is a well-priced watch for a well-made watch, for a good-looking watch, and an interesting, unique-looking watch at that. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I do hope to see you in the next video.